College football here before we close out segment one. On Tuesday night, the college football playoff announced their first rankings. No real surprises here. A little bit of an uproar with LSU being 3 and undefeated Notre Dame at 4. But LSU will get a chance to prove their worth as they will host Alabama this weekend. And Eric, the books actually have them as a 14.5-point underdog. That's the biggest underdog LSU has been at home since 1999. We've seen Bama. They have really yet to be challenged this year. Tua Tagovailoa hasn't even played in the fourth quarter, it feels like. So will LSU be able to keep this game close, you feel like, on Saturday night?
First of all, I'm amazed that you can say that gentleman's last name because it's been over a year and I still can't say it. So I'm just still going to call him Mr. T. But look, 14.5 points, Alabama, they cover. I think they go over that with LSU. I hate to say that because I'm not an Alabama fan one bit, but this team is unbelievable. Maybe one of the best teams that college football has ever seen, especially in the modern era. They are winning games and they're not even close. The closest game they've even had this year was like 65-31 as far as the spread. But their lowest output has been 45 points. When they played Texas A&M, it was 45-23. I guess that would have been their closest game by mathematical margin there. But it's just crazy what this team can do. They're going to have a tougher time, certainly with LSU. Notre Dame doesn't have to be too upset because they're going to make that jump. They don't play anybody the rest of the year. They really haven't played anybody. That's why the schedulers don't give them much respect. LSU goes through a tougher schedule, so even though they have one loss, that's why they're ahead. But they're going to get their second loss, and they're going to get it fairly quickly. Probably by the third quarter, this game is over.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think LSU, with just the crowd, everything at a night game, they'll bring it early, but I just think Alabama's just going to overrun them. So I got one last quick question for you. I know you always love to talk about your Penn State Nittany Lions with their 2 losses, but they have a big game coming up this weekend as well. They'll go to the Big House to play Michigan and a chance to really upset the apple cart for the Wolverines season. So are you thinking about the upset and a chance to do that to the Wolverines, or you just feel they're playing too well right now?
No, it's not going to happen. Not a chance for a lot of reasons. The Wolverines are actually playing really well. Penn State also sucks every time they have a big game that means anything. We've seen that for pretty much 2 decades now. So I have no hope. I probably won't even watch the game. I'll watch it score-wise on my phone, but I'm not even sure I'm going to watch the game because I can't put myself through that much acid reflux for 3 hours. Penn State's only hope in this season is actually to beat Michigan, give Michigan their second loss, hope that Ohio State gets another loss, and then it gets a little bit crazy, at least in the Big Ten, although Michigan State, with beating Penn State, would still be ahead of them, but I think Michigan State could still lose again. So the only chance that Penn State has at a big bowl game, and I'm not talking BCS, I think they're really far out of that, but the only chance they have at a big bowl game outside of the BCS is to, like you said, upset the apple cart, beat Michigan, then the Big Ten becomes a mess. You get kind of a good bowl game out of it, but that's a pipe dream. Michigan's going to destroy them. I think Michigan wins by 2 touchdowns or more.
All right, well, you heard it here from Eric. Get yourself to the sports bet and put the money on Michigan this coming weekend. Eric, that's a wrap for segment 1. When we come back with segment 2, got to talk about baseball. The World Series came to an end. The Red Sox took it from the Dodgers. This Red Sox team is young, and they have a lot of star power on this team. Are they a dynasty in waiting? A current dynasty we see right now, the Golden State Warriors, they just keep on cruising. They are smashing people right now. 3 of their big 4 are playing phenomenal basketball at this point, but is there a potential wrench that could be thrown into this team that they could have to deal with? And then we're going to get into 2 topics that might get Eric stirred up. The Lakers, they are struggling. When is the tipping point for LeBron James? And then Eric and I will debate what happened on Sunday at Martinsville. Joey Logano, was his move fair or a cheap shot on Martin Truex Jr.? We'll have that when we come back. Welcome back. It is Talkworthy time here in segment 2. Let's talk a little baseball. The World Series came to an end on Sunday night. The Red Sox win it 4-1. They took care of the Dodgers. But, Eric, it seems like the talk of this series, really throughout this series, was a lot of the puzzling managerial decisions that were made by the Dodgers. It started in Boston with them leaving some of their big left-handed hitters on the bench. It got back into LA. They win an 18-inning game. They come back, and they take out their starter, Rich Hill, who was on a one-hitter. It felt like he was taken out maybe a little bit early, and then all hell broke loose when they brought the relievers in. So we know analytics in baseball, it's getting huge. We've seen it pull over into the NFL, into the NBA, but it seems like a lot of the baseball decisions are very much based on analytics, not a lot of the eye test anymore. So for this Dodgers team, Eric, did relying on analytics hurt this team too much in the World Series?
I have to be honest with you, Justin. I feel like baseball is a game that I don't really understand anymore, and I don't even enjoy it as much. We talked about some of the things with baseball that are hurting it throughout the last year, let's say, in our podcast. And now you get into the playoffs, and I tried to watch as much playoff baseball as I can. I genuinely enjoy playoff baseball, and I really like World Series baseball. These games, as I'm trying to watch them, I just don't understand, and I don't recognize the game of baseball like I used to when I was a kid. I played baseball growing up up until high school. I just don't understand the game. I mean, you've got shifts happening that are really crazy. I mean, you could drive 13 or 14 buses on one side of the field without touching, in between the fielders because the shift is so large and all 8 guys are literally, on one side of the field. Do these guys just not know how to hit to the opposite field anymore? Are they that bad at hitting to the opposite field that you can put a shift on like that? And then you see it with pitching. Throughout the season, there was barely any complete games in pitching. And this is a thing of the past. They've got these middle relievers now that's all the rage in baseball. And again, when we were growing up and we were seeing guys make lots of strikeouts in a game and they would have complete games and no hitters, and this isn't something you see that much in baseball anymore. And even guys who are on a one-hitter or a two-hitter, they don't make it past the 7th or 8th inning. They don't go the distance anymore because, we're going to bring in a long reliever, a middle reliever, and then we'll get to our setup guy, and then we'll get to our closer. And it's just a game I don't understand. And so to your point with the analytics, my childhood was growing up watching the Mets and the Pirates and the Braves and that whole division in the National League fight each other. And you've got the Sid Bream and Bobby Bonilla and Barry Bonds, Darryl Strawberry. You've got that whole era there where it was just baseball. You've got Gary Carter, and you've got so much emotion and pizzazz in these teams. And you felt like everything swung on momentum and what the manager felt was the right thing. And you put a guy in. I can't even remember some of the Braves guys when they were beating the Pirates seemed like every year to get to the World Series. There were Braves guys that would come off the bench into a pinch hit role and deliver a game-winning single. And these were guys that you didn't even know who the heck they were. And that was because the game back then was all feel. It was all momentum. It was all based on, what's the right thing in the moment? Now they're looking at charts and graphs and spreadsheets and analytics, and this happened 99% of the time, or this happened 79% of the time when he reached down to tie his shoe and the day after his grandmother died and all this stuff. And it's like, it's stupid. It doesn't make sense. What really got me is that when we texted each other Sunday night and I said, wow, this Saints and Vikings game is really good, but I forgot that the World Series was on and it was a deciding game. And we were sitting there watching NFL football. And it's because baseball just doesn't ring in my mind because it's a game I don't recognize. And analytics, to your point, has, I think, a lot to do with that.
Look, I completely understand using sabermetrics throughout the regular season. You have 30 teams playing 162 games. You have a lot of data that you can compile and maybe come up with numerical statistics that give you a better chance to win. But when you get into the playoffs and games are managed completely different and you don't have near the number in your database to be able to pull from, and you start to remove the human element from the game. And just to your point, the way that starting pitching, I mean, we saw the Brewers put a pitcher out for one guy, a starter out for one guy. So that is something you would never, ever see in the regular season. How you would set your lineup then based on that is going to then greatly change because that would never happen in the regular season versus the playoffs. So I think just the fact that so many magical moments that we see in sports are things that we don't expect, and trying to use numbers and dictate and take away from maybe what your gut would tell you or your eyes would tell you that you've seen from a guy or what you think he could do based on looking at numbers in a regular season in a completely different spot where maybe there's probably no pressure when that guy's putting those numbers up versus what they're going to be doing in the playoffs. That's what doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I think at some points you're robbing yourself of a chance of a guy like Muncy or Bellinger jumping up for you and getting a big hit, getting an extra base hit, drawing a walk, doing some kind of damage. What you saw them do in the regular season and saying, because the numbers tell us we shouldn't, we're not going to do that. We're going to take our best bats and we're going to put them on the bench, even when the starters maybe are only going 4 or 5 innings. So I think it definitely had an impact on the game, and it's having an impact for more than just the Dodgers. There's a lot of teams it's having an impact on. And to your point, I think it hurts baseball because a lot of baseball is a game that, look, it's a lot of older fans, and it's not the same game that they're used to watching. And young people aren't really clamoring to watch a lot of baseball. I know the World Series ratings to go. It's the World Series. You would expect that they could get 10 to 14 million people, which is about what they had for most games. You look at the Super Bowl, it's getting well over 100 million. Even the NBA Finals are 20, 30 million for those 7-game series. So baseball's got a lot of work to do. But baseball, I think, did get lucky because one of their mainstay franchises, Eric, looks like a team that's going to be a team that's going to have to be dealt with for many years to come, and that's the Boston Red Sox. They're a young team. We know the Red Sox have the financial ability to spend money to keep their team in place, keep a good roster. It's kind of what we've talked about a few weeks ago with some of these smaller market teams that they jump up, they win, and then they disappear. I don't think we're going to see that with Boston, Eric. So do you think this is a team that could win multiple World Series and become sort of that modern-day dynasty?
Yeah, I really do. And you look at the fact that the Boston Red Sox have already won a handful of World Series since 2004. So I think they're going to put more rings in that collection over the next, let's say, 4 to 6 years. They had 108 wins this year, only 54 losses. So a record of 667, that's really, really good in baseball. Now, the Yankees, right behind them, had 100 wins. And I think it's kind of interesting because the Yankees, when they acquired Giancarlo Stanton and they've got all these bats, they've got Aaron Judge, and they're looking at, wow, they're just going to dominate. And the Red Sox didn't care about any of that. So I think it's kind of nice for baseball that the Red Sox went on to win the World Series rather than one of those teams that we've talked about, like the Brewers, if they had jumped up and done anything this year. Because I think the Brewers in another year or two are just going to be an also-ran. Baseball's better off for having the Red Sox win the World Series this year. They're going to be a dominant force. They're going to keep the Yankees at bay. Everyone was concerned, myself included, that the Yankees were going to dominate for the next couple of years. I hope I know you are, but I hope there's not a lot of Orioles fans out there because for Blue Jays, Orioles, that's going to be a really tough road to go down over the next couple of years. But yeah, I think it's good ultimately for baseball to have one of your legendary teams like a Red Sox be potentially good year in and year out. We saw it in the 90s with the Braves and the Yankees. The Red Sox, they've done it for the last decade or more. So it's good for baseball. I think they're going to be right there for a long time.
Well, we've seen that having a dynasty certainly hasn't hurt the NBA, even with having an extremely dominant team in the Golden State Warriors. And Eric, they look like they are playing maybe the best basketball since Kevin Durant has come over to this team. We've seen that Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson have all had 40-point games in 3 of their last 4 games. On Monday night, they put up 92 points in the first half at Chicago, and Klay Thompson set an NBA record with 14 three-pointers. But last Friday night, we did see something that could play a role for this team going down the stretch, and that is that DeMarcus Cousins sort of reared his ugly head and the ugly side that he can have in his impact on games. And he was actually ejected, and he wasn't even playing. He got thrown off the bench and ejected from a game for getting into it with Enes Kanter. So, Eric, as good as this Warriors team is playing right now, they're playing with such an unselfish style. We saw Steph Curry even talk about wanting Klay Thompson to break his record. Can DeMarcus Cousins, a guy that has shown a side of not getting along with teammates, not getting along with coaches, and frankly, just being a selfish guy at times, can he fit into this culture, or can his return to this team actually set the Warriors back?
This is a very interesting topic. First of all, Enes Kanter is a bozo. Everyone gets in it with Enes Kanter. So I don't really hold much fault to DeMarcus Cousins for that, although I think it's interesting to get thrown out of a game when you're not even playing in the game. Not a lot of players get to put that on their resume. So I think it's going to be interesting. To your point, the Warriors are playing some incredible basketball and doing it the Warriors way, which is through just phenomenal shooting. Curry is on fire this year. Kevin Durant is hitting just even another level. What a fantastic duo to watch. Now Klay Thompson seems to be finding his